Okay, I get knocked out.
Oh no, it's not. I'm trying to.
Recording. I'm just kidding.
No, I think it's recording. I'll cut the plane out. I feel bad. I don't
I want you to
want.
watch me eat.
Good morning. I want to thank everyone for coming to the fifth yard time my mother's fifth yard time for my mother from a festival of Yaakov Levi. We've been doing this year now for the fifth year. All but 1 year brought at Stein, with my Rabbi. Last year, Greece.
All right, yeah.
Because he made only because he made a chasana that I think the day before. But every year I try to figure out some new introduction for Rabbi Stein.
What has he done in the last year?
My mother's name is Fruma Yaakov Levi.
This will push you to do more next year.
But now we have statistics for this year. So I for those of you who don't know, but I'm assuming that everyone is in one way signed up already for Rabbi Stein's daily Halacha. You're now not counting the probably hundreds, if not thousands, probably thousands of emails. But on the texting alone, so we have an auto text, right? Here, Rabbi Stein told me to send over 600 a day. Over 600 a day. So my math is not that great, but I think we're pushing 20,000 texts a month. So that's 20,000 times besides the probably 100,000 shilas he answers a month that he's being Marbitz Torah all across the world, in Phoenix as well, because I know many people sign up for the what's it called. So the only thing I'm going to say this year is I'll encourage the island that if you're not already signed up for one of his numerous halacha, daily halacha tweets, texts, emails, that you can certainly ask me. You can certainly bother him after the shir and find out how to do that. Because essentially that is what today is, or what's not doing the whole year, which is you want to be Marbitz Torah and spread more Torah learning, spread more knowledge of halacha. So, without further ado, to introduce her with
Thank you. Every time I come out here, to be honest with you, I'm not sure whether I should come out or should not come out. It takes some time. I have shiurim that I give in at home, and I'm just not sure what's the proper thing to do, what's not the proper thing to do. Now, what happens to be, and what makes it more complicated, is because most of the shiurim that I give over the weekend were started by Leo, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, that are still continuing. And my texting and all that, Harbatz's Torah that I have the slip of doing is really on Elio's back. He's the one that started all this, he's the one that arranges it. So Hakaras HaTorah is an extremely important thing. So Mamela, that's why I come out. Besides for the nice weather, we're not going to get into the Gashmias. The Gashmi is part of it, but that's just simply a Torah. I have a lot of Hakaras HaTorah to him. I hope Hashem has a lot of Hakaras HaTorah because I hope that the Torah that I'm saying is proper. That's all. But he did his job basically. Now it's my responsibility, be my job. And like we said yesterday, whatever Eliyahu does is a automatic Ilui Neshama for his mother. That's the way it works. Anything that children do help the nifter in the next world, and his chosim that he's doing for his mother should continue. And he should continue in all of to do all his good things in good health and happiness. Since it's been 2 years, I guess I forgot that I wasn't here last year. I was wondering what I couldn't remember about last year. Well, that's the answer because I wasn't here last year. 2 things. One is that you can speak up. You should speak up. That's one. 2 is if I'm saying any words in Yiddish or Hebrew that people are not understanding, just give a holler for me to explain what it is that I mean. And 3rd is that if I'm saying something that doesn't seem to make sense, then it probably doesn't make sense. So don't sit back and say, oh, I don't know what he's talking about and finish. No, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then I probably don't know what I'm talking about either. So please make me aware of it. So I gave Eliyahu a list of different confusions. I've been compiling a list over the last couple of years of certain different confusions that we get in Halacha and in Yiddishkeit, where it's just simple confusions because people are just not aware of the background and the sources for the Halacha, and therefore we get confused and we end up doing the wrong thing. Some of them are interesting. Some are not so interesting. So I gave him a list. I don't remember exactly which things are on the list, which are not. We'll start going through them. If you don't like the subject matter, then just press a button and we'll turn the page and we'll go to a different subject, or we'll try to. Just as an example of what I'm trying to bring out here is, so we changed to the same Talamata last week, right? In the Shemana Esrei we changed to go from the same bracha to the same Talamata. So there are some confusions when somebody forgets to say the same Talamata. Just simple confusions of what you do when you forgot to say it, right? For example, if you forget to say the same Talamata by Baruch Aleinu, right? So what do? So you say it in Shema Kollel. You add it in Shema Kollel. Everybody's aware of it. You add it in Shema Kollel. Let's say when we changed after Sukkot or on Sukkot from Mashiv Haruach Amar Dashim to Mered Atol, right? I'm sorry, from Mered Atol to Mashiv Haruach Amar Dashim. We switched. Let's say you forgot to say Mashiv Haruach Amar Dashim. Can you say that in Shema Kollel? Right? You cannot say that in Shema Kollel. That doesn't work. Right? So sometimes people get confused. They think, well, if I messed up in something in davening, so I just added in Shema Kollel. That does not work in this situation. Now, with all these things, what do you do with the confusion? You go back to the basics, try and understand why it works, and then you can understand the differences. So the reason why, if you miss the same bracha or the same Talamat al-Bracha in Baruch Aleinu, you say it in Shema Kollel, is because it's a request from Hashem, right? There's 3 different sections of Shemona Esrei. You have the first brachas, which are just praising Hashem, and then you have the middle, which are our requests, and then you have the last brachas, which is thanking Hashem. So if you made after December 4th, or this year December 5th, we're required to make a request of Hashem of a saying Talamat al-Bracha. You have to make that request. If you don't make that request, it doesn't work. So therefore, you have to do that in Shema Kollel if you forgot to do it in Baruch Aleinu. But if you said Mered Hatol instead of Mashiv Haruach Amar Dashim, or you didn't say anything at all, like the way it is in Ashkenaz, then that's a praise. Shema Kollel is not the proper place for a praise. So therefore, you cannot stick it in Shema Kollel. Right? It would be. Everyone understand what I'm saying here? Again, if it's a praise, then you cannot stick it in Shema Kollel because that's the section of Shemona Esrei that's not meant for praise, that's meant for requests. Right? So you have to just make a request of the same Talmud. You need to daven for rain and for dew, which has to be done in the middle section of Shemona Esrei. Okay, that's just simple one. That was not the intention of this shir. Okay, let's go to something maybe a little bit more. We'll try and go with the level of what you do the more complicated ones first or last, meaning do we First, the complicated one should go first. Okay. Okay. What? Mix it up. Now I'm very good at mixing things up. Okay, shatnez. Let's discuss shatnez. That was on the list, right? So there was some discussion of shatnez. Okay, so many are not aware of the halachas of shatnez, myself included. right? But I do not know how to check for shotness. I get asked shotness questions probably every day. I get at least 1 or 2 texts about what they have to check, what doesn't have to be checked. And then because what happens is that they put out an alert, Uggs, and then it's one particular thing, but nobody remembers exactly what the particular case is. So then they say Uggs, okay, so then everybody goes crazy about Uggs. Then they put out this particular brand, and then it's a problem, it's not a problem. And then everybody gets crazy with it. Okay, so let's just understand some basic misunderstandings that could happen with shotness. First things first with shotness is it has to be wool and linen. Okay? Polyester and wool, polyester and linen, you don't need me to tell you that. Right? Cashmere, which is from goats, right? Cashmere is from goats. Legitimate cashmere. Yeah, it's very similar to wool, just a lot more money. Cashmere has no issue of shotness whatsoever. Okay, so if you have a cashmere with linen jacket, sweater, sheep is wool. Sheep, lamb is wool, that's a problem. Goat, any other animal is 100% not an issue. Okay? That's what? Goat is no problem. Goat, cow, anything like that is not a problem. However, from what I understand, I don't think I ever wore anything cashmere in my life, but from what I was, and I hope not to wear anything cashmere in my life, probably around here it's not so popular either, I would imagine, cashmere based on the weather. What? What do you mean?
Check the cashmere.
Oh, yeah? Okay. So, right, yeah, so I forgot I have you. All right. Okay, so then for sure, if I say anything, cashmere is basically, they are, I'm not going to say they're liars, but they are not so honest when they say with cashmere. Most cashmere does have regular wool mixed in, so then nowadays you would have to check cashmere. Okay, that's just...
You can't tell the difference of them, right?
You can't, yeah? Okay, so then it makes it even, that makes it even worse. But just in the practical, yeah? Now, there's something called bittul. This is very interesting, at least I found this to be interesting. I hope you'll agree. If not, again, tell me to turn the page. There's something called bittul, right? If I drop a piece of meat into the eggs dairy? Okay, let's say the eggs were dairy out there, and I came by and I dropped a piece of meat into the eggs. Right? What's the halacha with the eggs? Yes, it depends. It depends how many more eggs there are than meat, right? So if there's for sure 60 times more eggs than meat, then it's going to be bottle, and you can go ahead and eat the eggs, no problem. If you see that piece of meat still in the eggs, can you eat that? Obviously not, because that's not called a mixture that you lost. Meaning in a b'diavad situation, meaning where it already happened and you can't find the meat in the eggs, so therefore you're allowed to eat the eggs because it's bottle 60. What about shatnez? Okay, so what is it? I have a strand of linen in a wool garment. The wool garment is a jacket. There's one strand of linen in the wool garment. Why don't we say that that's bottle? Right? Not bottle. The halacha is that it's not bottle, right? But why not?
You can take it out.
What?
You can take it out.
Certainly you could. No, I'm saying, let's say you can't find it.
You can't find it.
Let's say, obviously, if you see it there, then you got to take it out, which is also a question why. But we say that that's no problem. But if it's mixed in and you have no idea where it is, so what's the halacha? This is already not so clear, right? It should be bottle, should it not be?
It's heter, not really.
What? Very good. So that's this. When something heter is mixed in with something heter, meaning the strand of linen is allowed, right? You're allowed to have a strand of linen. There's nothing wrong with a strand of linen. So a strand of linen by itself is fine, and a wool garment by itself is fine. It's only right when you mix the two together, then that becomes a isser. Right, but really, until they're mixed together, it's heter and heter, something that's allowed and something that's allowed. To which we say, something that's allowed and something that's allowed will not be bottled, which is a disagreement. It is a disagreement, but that's the way we come out.
How is that different than meat and milk?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't want to go. That's a shach, and the place can discuss why that's different than meat and milk, because. Let's leave that. But that's an excellent question. Afterwards, we can discuss it. But so that's one thing. But now let's say a different situation. You have a big coat. On the left side of the coat, you have a strand of linen. On the right side of the coat, you have a strand of, well, let's get it's a coat made out of polyester. On the left side of the coat or the jacket, you have one strand of linen. On the right side of the jacket, you have a strand of wool. Is that shabbos? What? It's one, meaning, do we say that they combine or not? So that is a machlokes rishonim, which Sephardim would have to be machmer, because basically, again, if you understand what the isser of Shabbos is, then that will make the difference. The Rambam says what's wrong with Shabbos is if you have to look at the entire jacket. Does this jacket have Shabbos in it? It does, even though the linen and the wool are nowhere near each other. But if you take the whole jacket, then the whole jacket's an issue. The Rosh Ashkenazim hold that it's not an issue because they have to be actually sewn together. You have to look at the wool and the linen together. The wool and linen together they're not sewn together, so therefore it's not a problem according to Ashkenazim. Right? Okay, so so far it's not confusion, this is just knowledge. So here's where it can get confusing. So we're saying that shatnez is not batel, correct? There is an area in shatnez where it is batel, and it gets very interesting. Let's say I have a strand of wool, okay, that has let's take I have a strand of polyester that has wool mixed in, meaning there's a strand of string, right, and it's 51% polyester, 49% wool. Can I take that strand and now sew it into my linen jacket? You following what I'm saying here? Yeah, again, a linen jacket. I have a strand of string which is 51% wool, 49% 51% polyester, 49% wool. Can you sew that into your linen jacket? The answer is 100% you are allowed to. There's not even a reason to be strict on that. Okay? Maskim? Is anybody going to try this at home? Probably not. Probably not, but that's the halacha, right? That's very clear, the halacha. Why? Because we say that it's batel, right? We say that it is batel. So that's where the confusion is. We normally, in a regular shatnez, we do not say that it's batel, but in this particular situation, if there's a medium there that you're sewing it into the string, and then you're going to go add it to the linen, then that's 100%. That's 100% fine.
It's batel to the polyester, so that string
halakhically
becomes 100% polyester.
Oh, very good. Now Elio's on the ball. Now, here's where it gets. There's another confusion that comes from that, which is, so now we have this string, 51% polyester, 49% wool, and we want to add it to the linen. Right? We're saying 100% according to all opinions, you can put that into the linen. But how do we look at that strand? Do we look at it like it's 49%, meaning it's batel, but it's still a strand that has 49% wool and 51% polyester? Or do we look at it like this entire strand became polyester? What's the difference? So there was a shaila, and Rabbi Yashiv has a tshuva about this, where a fellow imported a lot of suits, and around the buttonhole, which is a fairly common place to have, they see, they check it, and there is shatnez there. Okay, but the shatnez is visible, meaning the linen looks white, right? So the linen has a little whiter look. So they look at the buttonhole, right, and they look at the strands, and the strands had more, 51%. I don't remember exactly what the case is. 51% let's say polyester, and 49% of it was linen, and it was sewn into the buttonhole. Okay, now we're saying it should be batel, it should be fine, right? The problem is if you can see the linen, then how can you say that it's batel? Meaning, just like if you could see the piece of meat in the eggs, you cannot eat the eggs, right? You have to take out the meat. So here too, you see the linen in the buttonhole, right? So now, was this guy required to take a heavy loss and to take out all the buttonholes, which would be a very, very big loss for him, right? So now, that gets to what Elio was saying. If you look at the strand, that it's still wool in there, it's just batel. So now we know what the din of bittel. If you can see it, then you cannot. Then it's not batel. So then you'd be required to take it out. The Chazon Ish doesn't learn it like that. The Chazon Ish learns it, and he says that no, when you have a strand, a string that's 51% polyester, 49% wool, then we look at that entire string that it now became polyester. So therefore, according to the Chazon Ish, he would not have to take out all the buttonholes. To which Rabbi Yasher paskin that he does not have to, because it's a great loss for him, and therefore he is not required. He can be relying on the Chazon Ish's opinion that it is considered bottle. Good. Does this qualify as complicated or?
The wool is still visible.
What?
The wool is still visible.
Right, but the Chazon Ish holds that
How can it be bottle wool?
because the Chazon Ish holds not a din in bittul. Chazon Ish holds that once the string gets mixed in, it now has a din of polyester. It has meaning again. It's not considered bittul. It's considered like this entire string is now 100% polyester. So even though you can see that it's linen, it still has the halacha tells you that it's polyester, and therefore it can be sewn into the jacket. Right?
So what is it? It's not bittul. What is it?
It's polyester sewn into
It's
a
just
wool.
definition. What is it?
What is it's
I
polyester?
mean, you're trying to defining what it is. It is wool.
Polyester.
That's polyester.
Polyester, according to Chazon Ish, right? So Rabbi Yasher paskin that you can rely on that.
What if it's a wool jacket and you have a string that's 51% wool and 49% linen?
No, then it's no good. Then it's no good
Why is it different?
because you go.
Why isn't that string that 51% wool and 49% linen, 51% wool?
You're saying 50 again. The string
It's
is
a
what?
wool jacket, you have one string that's 51% wool and 49%. You keep on saying polyester.
Right, because
What
that
if-
middle, the polyester makes you can't do. We
Because
don't do
it's
bittul.
touching.
We don't do bittul and shatnez. That's what I'm trying. That's the confusion that I'm trying to
Because
get
it's
out.
not actually touching.
When it's wool and linen together, there is no bittul. When there's a medium there, which we're saying is polyester, then there is bittul. Okay, this is not so practical for everybody.
How do you get this Charlotte cracker on?
Like this case.
That case, like.
Yeah, that would be basically it. I'm just,
Regular visual.
yeah, listen, this is the confusing part. We'll try and get to more practical. We'll try and get to more practical now. However, this time an interesting thing. So Rabbi Yasher paskin that it's okay based on it's a big loss for him. That's very nice. So he's a suit seller and he sold, let's say, 10,000 suits. So that's a big loss for him, right? 10,000 suits to go replace all the buttonholes is a big loss. But I'm one customer coming to him to buy a suit. It's no big loss for me,
That's what I'm saying.
right? So what's the story then? Meaning, for the guy who's selling the suits, it's a big loss. For everybody that's buying it, it's not a big loss.
This is
Right.
wearing the shackles, right?
It's good, but basically
No,
the
I'm
question
saying,
is, does the seller in this scenario have to tell the buyer, by the way, there is a big, complicated halachic issue with this suit. If you want, or can he just say, no, this suit is perfectly fine?
Put shackles check by Rabbi
What?
Yashiv inside the
Yeah,
jacket.
he'll take a big loss, each guy he tells us to, right? No, the guy, he could tell him, hey, Rabbi Yashiv, it's good, which many will just say, that's fine by me.
No, I said put a label on the inside. Just write Rabbi Yashiv's name on it, and they don't say
You
anything.
just said, according to Rabbi Yashiv,
Yeah.
this is good,
Yeah.
okay, whatever it is, but then, well,
Well, have some Beruba.
right, meaning we're only allowing it because it's a big loss. He wasn't allowed, if it would be one guy that came to Rabbi Yashiv and had told him this situation, he would tell him replace the buttonholes,
You
right?
always have that. Every half of the river can be broken down into little
Correct,
pieces.
any Hefsin Ru on a commercial level, right?
No, but even in the house level.
Why?
it is,
I'm saying
If you're gonna lose it, you're gonna lose it. It has to move on a pot of food. This guy's not gonna. I'll tell you, by the way, your plate might not be kosher. But I don't want to tell anybody else.
Right, no, that might
So,
be.
I mean,
That may be. So we paskin, Lamaisa, in most situations we paskin that it's considered Hefsin Meruba and he does not have to tell anybody anything. Okay? Which gets into a whole kashrus story. When does the kashrus agency have to tell you things? When do they not tell you things? When can they hide things when they don't have to hide things? Yeah? Okay, so we're good with that. So that's one confusion. Okay, let's go to something maybe a little bit more. Yes?
So the guy buys the suit, right, he doesn't know what's what, he has it checked, and the guy finds sharpness in the buttons. He replaces them, or it's,
Yeah, well, it depends how the sharpness is, but in most scenarios it's
so
straight
is
wool.
it gonna be like when you go to Brooklyn buy a suit and it's sharpness free with the tag, can they put that on there?
Yeah, if you have a heter and it fits all the parameters that we're saying, then you can write that it's sharpness free. If you go with the lenient bit. The most common of these issues is the padding, right? The padding in the baseball glove issue. You wear the baseball glove issue a number of years ago. Somebody realized that the padding in the baseball gloves is made out of old clothing just cut up and pressed together and put into the baseball glove. So is that shatnez? And the shoulder pads of jackets, is that shatnez? So there are varying opinions depending on how they make it, because really shatnez has to be mixed together, not just pressed together. Whatever, that's where you sometimes the shatnez level, you have to know what their level is, because they may just tell you, this is fine for shatnez. And depending on what the standard is, just like everything else, it's like there's different standards in shatnez, right? It's interesting because if you word it by saying it's shatnez free, maybe not. If you say it's kosher, right, it's different, right? You say shatnez free, it may not be shatnez free. It could be it has shatnez, but according to Halacha, it's not shatnez, right? So really, depending on how you word it. What? It doesn't. No, it doesn't really come. All of the shoulder pads or that type of thing. If you're makel, you're makel.
I don't usually come across
needs to be checked.
I was hoping nobody would ask what type of clothing needs to be checked, because that is really. Well, that's a loaded question. Okay, well, let's just do it quickly because we'd like to get on to more practical situations. Basically, the halacha is if there's less than a 10% chance of finding something, you don't have to check. For example, we have all those beautiful vegetables out there which didn't seem to be too popular today, right? I can't imagine why, right? Do you have to check your cucumbers for bugs? Now, I myself, and I have that picture somewhere buried in my phone, found a worm about this long in a cucumber once. Okay? Does that mean that I have to go check every cucumber? Meaning I can't bite into a cucumber and I got to cut it up to make sure there's no worm inside my cucumber? The answer is absolutely not, right? Otherwise, you would not be able to bite into an apple. You can't. Apples will have worms and or bugs. There's no doubt that there are apples that have worms and bugs. So do you have to cut up the apple to check it? The answer is no. Why not? Because there's a less, not majority, it's got to be less than, we paskin something called miyut hamatzui and miyut she'enu matzui, meaning 10% is the way that most rabbis say. If there's more than a 10% chance of something, then you have to check it. If there's less than a 10% chance, then you don't have to check it. So it's much less than 10% of apples that have worms, right? And cucumbers the same thing. However, lettuce, I don't get involved in the bug checking at all. But lettuce and strawberries or whatever it is that they say that has, and it depends also where it's coming from. You could have infestation in the West Coast and nothing in the East Coast. Excuse me, etc., etc. Anyway, so shatnez. I don't know too many people that ever had shatnez in any suits. But then again, I'm not such a high class guy. The higher class you go with your clothing, the more chance of shatnez. But I imagine most in here never had shatnez in their clothing. I'm not sure. I know. I'm not sure.
Well, we have last chance.
What?
Mixes things up.
Last chance.
Other people are getting nicer.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But basically, a majority. Well, it's less than 10% of the stuff you check has.
But also do with brand. It's
Correct.
brand,
So then you have to
yeah.
break eeach thing down, just like you have to break down strawberries and lettuce, and you don't look at all vegetables and fruits together. So you have to break it down. Bottom line is on anything cheap. It's very, very, very rare. It's not even a fraction of 1% that has shatnez. I mean, it's a fluke thing. So according to the basic halacha, you absolutely do not have to check most things for shatnez. However, if something's easily checked, then you're supposed to check even if you're not really required to. Meaning, before you eat an apple, it would be wise to just take a look at it to see there's no holes that there's any worms doing. That's not a big deal to do. Right? Assuming you're not starving and haven't eaten in 3 days and then you don't even have time to look at it, then of course, then you just bite into the apple. But if it's easy to do, so then it's okay. So where Moshe Feinstein writes in a tshuva, and he says that it's easy to check a suit. What's the big deal? So if you can check it easily, so then it's fine.
In New York, it's checked easily. Here is not.
Correct. Okay, very good. Now in Shulchan Aruch it does say you have to check. In the actual Shulchan Aruch it says you have to check clothing for shatnez.
For him, it's not even right.
You better answer your phone. Anyway, the issue is now that they ruin the suit sometimes. Sometimes they really chop up the suit, right? And they don't sew it back together. And sometimes they charge a lot of money, and you have like a bunch of suits, and it ends up being a lot of money. And depending on your financial abilities, it may be considered a problem, and then difficult for you. So then you may not have to check, but that you'd have to ask the individual question. But according to the basic halacha, you really probably do not have to check most things. However, became the minhag in Kollel, so that we do check, and because once in a while you find things. But just because there's an alert that goes out that somebody found shotness in one suit, that's like sending out an alert that somebody found a worm in an apple. Right? Nobody's going to say you have to start checking worms, apples for worms, just because there was one guy that had it. It has to happen on a steady basis. Okay, but that's basically that. Yes. Okay, something that this is really more of a Purim sugya of a confusion than it is for Hanukkah, but maybe it's Hilchas Challah. Okay, so Hilchas Challah meaning you have to separate dough. So when you bake challah, when you bake cakes, etc., so you have to separate. There's a confusion there, which makes people a little mixed up. Let's say, and the reason why I say it's for Purim is because usually that's when people bake a lot, right? On your regular standard Shabbos, maybe you bake 5 pounds. It's not so important. Doesn't come up so much. But when you're baking a lot, maybe I don't know. Here they bake for Hanukkah, maybe whatever.
Donuts, no?
What?
Donuts.
It's the donuts. Donuts is is everybody making their own donuts?
So, I don't know.
Okay, you have to make a lot of them. You have to make a lot of. You got to make a lot of donuts. So the first thing is let's say you bake 2 5-pound batches of challah. Let's say, right? Do you have to take off challah from each batch or not? Okay, so that's a fairly straightforward halacha. Is basically that if the challah is in the same room, then you don't have to take off 2 separate. You make 1 bracha and separate from 1, and it covers both. Okay, if you were to make 2 brachas, that would be a bracha levatol.
Is that what they do by these like big challah bake things?
So I don't know exactly what they do with the challah bake things, nor do I want to know what they do, because we're going to get to that in a minute. Okay, so that's the halacha, but that's what they do in the regular bakeries. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't necessarily even have to be in the same room. It could be in the same house. And according to some opinions, and it could be the Mishnah Brura says this in Hilchos Pesach, of all the places that we have in Mishnah Brura, it doesn't really discuss. This is a more Yoredei, a kasher situation, which is no Mishnah Brura on that. Chofetz Chaim didn't write on that. But it comes up in Hilchos Pesach when to separate challah from matzah, because you don't want to do it when it's dough, because then it's going to become chametz. Meaning when they bake challah when they bake matzah on Pesach. Okay, whatever it is. But there, the Mishnah Brura says that it could very well be that I can separate from my 5 pounds right here in my house, on yours in your house, way on the other side of town, and have, as long as you have that in mind, then that would work. Okay, so basically, what could come out according to that opinion is that you have unfortunately a lot of not religious people not taking off challah. If you have them in mind when you're taking off your challah, it could very well be that your challah suffices for everybody's. Don't try that at home, or maybe do try that at home. It can't hurt. Whether that works or not is debatable, but there's certainly opinions that hold that it does work. But the point is that 2 5-pounders will combine, and you only have to take off 1 challah. Let's say you're baking 5 pounds of challah in your house, right? Not more than 5 pounds. And you have 2 batches. Now, do those combine? Okay, meaning I have 5 pounds, right? But it's each one separate. So I have, let's say, a pound of challah, right? So I have 5 different challahs, right?
What's the minimum of
Oh, okay. So the minimum, it's very interesting. So anywhere from 2.5 pounds to 5 pounds is debatable. I mean, Reb Chaim Noah, who always has smaller measurements, holds at 2.5 pounds. About a little bit more, you should separate challah from. The Chazon Ish holds that it's got to be closer to 5 pounds to separate challah. So basically, after 2.5 and change, you should separate challah without a bracha. As you get closer to 5 pounds, it becomes more of a reason to make bracha. For some reason, I think the minhag of most is not to make a bracha unless it gets close to 5 pounds, because we never want to make a bracha that's potentially a bracha levatala. But I don't think we're makbid on this Chazon Ish shir for anything else. So I don't know why by challah it became a thing that we do the Chazon Ish.
Somebody don't know the 5 pounds of the dough, not the flour, the dough together.
Correct. And then without other ingredients in it. Correct. It's got to be 5 pounds of actual flour. Yeah. Now
dough or flour?
Well, it's really dough. It's really dough, but it's
with
not.
the water or without? Because the water weighs a lot.
What?
The water adds a lot of weight.
Mix.
That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. So that's you.
It's gotta be
it's
mixed.
5 pounds altogether when it's mixed.
Oh.
Now, really, you're supposed to really make the bracha on the challah. This is just parenthetical. Right when you add the water to the flour, not once it's dough. But for some reason it became the minhag that we don't make the bracha until after it's dough. Okay, but let's get back to this point here. So let's say you have five, what?
No.
So let's say you have these 5 challahs here. You forgot to take it off before you braided it. Okay? So now, do we say that they combine or not? Meaning, in the case of the 5 pounds and 5 pounds, we said they do combine as long as they're in the room together or in the house or whatever it is, whatever distance you want to say, but if they do combine without touching. If it's less than 5 pounds and you want to combine them to make 5 pounds of challah that would require you to separate, then it would have to be either in the same basket or a bag or touching, preferably touching. Okay? Yeah, you see the difference? There's going to be confusion with this because people think, oh, well, I can combine 2 batches, 5 pounds each without them touching. Which, by the way, there is an opinion that says it's better to have them touching, but we certainly don't pass them like that. Maybe it's better to, maybe not. But you think, okay, so 2 5-pounders combined, so why shouldn't 5 1-pounders combine? It does not combine. They should be touching or in a bag together. Right? Now, when you're baking this, that's one confusion. The second confusion is so you want to get the mitzvah of challah, so you want to bake 5 pounds of challah. The problem is that you don't have enough people in your household to eat 5 pounds of challah. So what are you going to do? You give away some. You bake it, and you give some away to other people. Right? So there's also confusion. If you are going to give them away once the challah is baked, then you are allowed to make a bracha of challah, according to most opinions. Okay, although somebody just asked this to me last week, and he told me that the star case says you should not make a bracha, but that's really it's a minority opinion. But most paskin that again, if you're giving the challah away once it's baked, then you can make a bracha when you're separating the challah.
That means they don't make in bakeries. They don't make bracha.
What?
In production,
no,
they don't make.
Okay, so now for a baker though, a baker would be allowed to, and the reason is meaning let's just get to halacha and then we'll go to the reason. That's again that. But if you're going to give it out in the dough form, which is I think what happens in the schools when they make in the play groups, whatever it is, they make a challah. It's got 5 pounds, and they're giving it out in dough form, so everybody can go bake it at home since they don't have ovens in the playgroup. Then a bracha should not be made. You cannot make a bracha in that situation. So the challah bake-offs, I don't know exactly what's going on there. It could be one person has 5 pounds and going to keep it for themselves. They make a bracha and they have in mind everybody. That could be yeah, could be no. I don't know what they do there, right? But just the point is that again, if you're giving it out when it's baked, then you make a bracha. If you're giving it out when it's dough, you don't make a bracha. Okay? If you're a baker, though, you can always make a bracha, and that's basically because the rule is would you be happy if all this challah went to one person or not? Right? If you're happy that it would all theoretically go to one person, then we would look at it as, it could be that. Meaning if the baker says, so a guy comes into the bakery and says, I'm buying your whole stock of challah today, he's going to be very happy about it, right? So therefore, it's considered like it's all part one person's challah, right? But if it's private, and if somebody comes and says, I want to take all your challah, and you say, well, you can't and I want to give it out to my friend, and I want to give it to this, so you're not happy with them combining, so then they don't combine, and therefore they looked at separate doughs. Yes? So that's that with challah.
That's right.
Yeah? Any questions on that? On the challah? So one very practical thing is, so let's say you're not giving away the challah, you want to bake your 5 pounds, but you want to put some away for next week, freeze it. Right? So now what would you say there? Is that considered all for one person, or is it for later and it's not? So most posts can say, well, it's all for me, right? I might not be having it now, but I'm going to have it not when it's baked. If it's baked and then you freeze it, then of course there's no question. We're talking about if you baked some and you left some dough for later, right? In that situation, it's also fine to make a bracha since everything, the intention is for it to be yours. Yeah?
Well, what happened if for one person he has 2 doughs, each 2.5 pounds?
Right, so that's what we're saying. There, if it's one person, then you should touch them together, and then they would combine. You can't. They won't combine unless they touch.
So b'diavad if they did not touch.
B'diavad if they didn't. What do you want to make a?
If someone did it.
If someone did it and it didn't touch, then they're fine. What do you mean? They someone
There's
what do you mean,
someone
took off
made a
challah or
mistake.
didn't take off
Someone
challah?
made a mistake. Yeah, 2.5
Right.
pounds, and they made the bracha. They were mafish challah, but they were not touching. They made a mistake.
So what are you gonna do now?
I'm saying that's not good at all.
There's nothing what are you gonna do? I'm saying they separated challah, shaloi kedin, so it's okay. But nothing. Should they now put it together after it's baked and take again? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but
Yeah, that wouldn't hurt to do that. Yeah.
With the bracha, no
No bracha, no bracha.
and what's considered together? That's mamish be touching.
It should be mamish touching. Yeah, or in a bag. What I tell people is like it's a common thing that where women bake all the challahs and they remember they didn't take off the challah. So the easiest way to do is just take a garbage bag, a clean garbage bag, put it all into the garbage bag. Now it's all one bag together, and then it's going to be considered one challah, and then you take it off. In that situation, you wouldn't make a bracha. Yes, you wouldn't make a bracha. Let's say you forgot to give challah on Shabbos. You remember Friday night you didn't take off challah. So what do?
Do you need it for that Shabbos? You need the
Yeah, you're about to make a moitzi,
on that Shabbos.
and you realize that you did not take off challah. So the problem is that you're fixing your food. It's a form of fixing on Shabbos if you're going to take off the challah.
Yeah.
So basically what you do is you cut the challah and you leave off a bit at the end, and then after Shabbos you'll take off from that challah. But that's already a
If you're an Eretz Yisrael.
well, that's true also. Then Eretz Yisrael that won't work, and in Chutz La'aretz it will work.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because Eretz Yisrael is more it's a derasa. So it's stricter. Yeah.
Well, I make a gluten-free oat challah. Why, So anyway, I like to make a card. Yeah. And so we do the recipe calls for it's 51% oat flour and 49% just regular gluten-free flour.
So that would be fine. That's as long as that's a good point. Thank you. I should have said this, but that's considered one flour as far as I
It's
understand.
not you go with the majority.
This combination thing only works if it's the same ingredients. Meaning, if you had a chocolate cake that's 5 pounds and a challah that's 5 pounds, those will not combine because those are not meant to combine. Right? It's only something that potentially, again, let's get back to the same rule. You have to not mind everything being combined. So if it's a chocolate cake or any cake and challah, or if it's I don't know what another case would be, spelt and rye or something like that, then they will not combine because they're considered two separate entities.
No, but that's what he's saying. He's saying.
No, but that's not. He says one is gluten free and one is not. I'm saying.
No,
but
that's in the dough. When I make the dough for it to taste good, because oat flour doesn't taste good.
So you say, so it's two different.
You do
it's two of the 5.
50% oat
No,
flour.
that it would not combine. Right? No, that's not. Well, if you made it in one big dough.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's I thought you take
and
it
you
separate
go-
challahs.
no, my
No,
question-
Even
separate-
if they're shahakal, those the other flours are not real flour. They're shahakal.
It's rice flour.
Yeah, rice
Oh,
flour.
I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I thought it's because gluten free. You could use oats,
You
right?
use oat, but oat doesn't taste so good. So you use 51% to make it on might say.
No, so then
Then
it
you
wouldn't.
wanna-
Then it wouldn't
Oat
work.
is one of 5 grains.
Yes.
But he's saying he's using.
No, but you
rice.
also use other
Almond flour.
Rice or tapioca.
rice
Or
or-
But in other words,
shahakal.
for challah, how does that work?
It
The whole thing's
counts.
considered.
It counts together.
No, it's
How do you-
not. You have to
5
have.
grains.
The issue you're saying is basically sponge cake. Do they have sponge cake? We eat sponge cake around here? Okay, sponge cake, from what I understand, I never made a sponge cake in my life. I'm very good at eating it. I'm not very good at baking it. From what I understand, sponge cake has got very, very little flour in it. Am I right? It's mostly sugar. So to take off challah from sponge cake, you would have to have a lot of flour. I mean, it's got to be very large, a sponge cake.
So
It's the
it
same
has to
thing.
be
You just
from
got to
oat.
apply that. You got to apply.
That's what I was saying.
legitimate
Lamais in
flour.
his case, he has 51% oat flour. So what is that? What's it
It's
considered?
not. It's got to have enough of a shear of the oat flour.
Of just oat flour.
Yeah.
It's 5 pounds of
Yeah,
oat flour.
yeah. Maybe you could be more makel. The other opinions that you don't need 5 pounds. I don't know.
Oh.
Maybe you don't have to be.
But you wouldn't take it off with the bracha anyway.
But-
Or you would.
Depends how much is there.
Right.
Depends how much
But for the hamaitzi, the right is good.
for hamoitzi,
The right of oats is good.
for yeah.
I
Okay.
understand what you mean.
How much is it?
Separate with the bracha.
15 minutes.
15, 20 minutes? Okay. Okay, just walk out. I'm not offended. Just walk out. I promise you. I'm not offended.
Announce, like, that you have to take on powerful. I think that like just like the old things, we'll give you announcements, transfer it in, and you wanna make a dough out of it.
Is that so?
Like, they're not calculating, they're not telling you how much dough you need, they're telling you how much power you need based on what they're understanding of how much dough
With
you need.
other ingredients?
Yeah, no, if they're saying this is the flour content of your dough, you need the word. I think that's why I understand you.
Yeah, I don't know, could be. Oh, by the way, once we're on that subject, whole wheat, and I think I tweeted this out a couple of months ago and I got a lot of flack for it. If you're doing whole wheat flour, then it really needs more than 5 pounds. Right? According to most poskim, whole wheat flour, the OU certainly holds this. I think you need about, I don't remember exactly how much more. If you're making whole wheat flour, you need more. And the reason for that is the way they do whole wheat is they separate the, what do you call it? The chaff from the bran, they separate and then they put it back in. So if it was all made, if they just threw all the wheat in there and they just made it into flour, then it would be fine. You would just do 5 pounds. But since they separate it, so we look at the bran that it's an added ingredient. So since it's, again, since it was separated, it becomes an added ingredient, therefore you would need more than 5 pounds if you want to go with the chazanish. But maybe you don't have to, it's 2 chumras. To go with 5 pounds is a chumrah, and to go with adding more of the bran is a chumrah, so maybe you would be able to be more lenient. Yeah, you ask a shayla when it comes out to that. Okay, something a little bit more, a little lighter.
If you did regular, if I crush my own whole wheat, I wouldn't.
Correct. If it all gets crushed at the same time, is that you can do that out here, right? You can do that in Phoenix. You get the. I don't know. All the Rebbes come out here to get the flour, so maybe they bring. No, I'm saying for Pesach, they're coming out to Arizona, aren't they? Okay. You should do that for a fundraiser or something. They can get your own flour for Pesach or whatever. Anyways, yarmulke, yeah. So Baruch Hashem, I think it was on the list. Was it on the list? Was it on the list, yarmulke? So last night, of course, somebody texted me a question about a yarmulke, so I'll just present it here, and then we'll discuss it, and then where there's a little bit of also a confusion when it comes to yarmulkes. This fellow's question was, he has a business meeting and he does not want to wear a yarmulke. Does he have to wear a yarmulke? Does he not have to wear a yarmulke? Okay? So it's a good question, right? What is the halacha? Where does the source for yarmulke come from? That's a Gemara in Shabbos. That's a Gemara in Kiddushin that says that a person should have something on top of his head to keep the fear of God in him. Basically, that's what it is. I can't say I understand that exactly what that means, but keeping it on top of your head. It actually says it's covered shemayim. It doesn't really say fear. Everybody explains it as fear of heaven to keep a yarmulke, but that's not the way the Gemara says it. It says it's like covered shemayim. If I remember correctly, that's the lashon. It's respect for shemayim to have a covering on your head. Okay, whatever it is, we hold in so there's a few different simanim about this. In the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, it says that a person has to have the yarmulke on his head, and you can't walk more than 4 amos, 6-7 feet without a yarmulke. It sounds like sitting in your chair, you don't have to wear a yarmulke. Right? Just as if this guy's business meeting, he takes it off and he stays in the same place. So then it seemed it would be fun. They want to walk and show him around. And say, no, I can't move. I have to stay here. Maybe that would make it better for him. Probably would make it better for him. But that's one halacha. So because of heaven, however you understand that, you have to have a head covering. Right? Later on in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Sadi Beis, it says that you're not allowed to go into a shul without a yarmulke. Okay? So now the question is pretty obvious. If you have to be everywhere with a yarmulke, then why are you saying that you're not allowed to go into a shul without a yarmulke, without a head covering, right? So the poskim discuss and say, well, walking without a yarmulke, less than 4 amos or even more than 4 amos, is called a midus chasidus, meaning I don't want to say it's a nice thing to do. I don't know. Is it nice? It's more than nice. Whatever. It's something that you should do, but it's not required. However, in shul, a head covering is required. Okay? By the way, that applies to women too. That's what I was always wondering, so women, for whatever reason, don't cover their hair, do cover their hair, whatever it is, but in shul, they give out things to cover their hair. So I was always wondering, what does that do? That is a yarmulke. That's essentially what it is. For women, what? So single women, why don't they have to? It's really unclear why single girls do not have to put on some sort of covering in shul. It seems like it became the meaning that single girls don't. It's a question why single girls don't cover their hair at all, according to those that hold you have to cover hair. But okay, whatever it is. But it's complicated why it is that women, single girls don't have to put it. But in shul, you got to have a head covering of some sort, right? So Yeah, so
For
that's
tefillah or stam in shul?
no, in
You
shul.
walk into a shul.
Just in shul, not in the dami. And then you're also not allowed to make a bracha without. You're not allowed to mention Hashem's name without having a head covering. People think that you are not allowed to eat without a head covering. I don't know any source for that whatsoever. Right? You can. I think where it came from is that you're not allowed to make a bracha without a head covering, so you can't eat unless you make a bracha. So then they think that you are not allowed to eat without a head covering. That's not true. As far as I know, that's not true. Again, without getting into that, you should always have a yarmulke on, right? But if you, for whatever reason, don't have a yarmulke and you made a bracha, then you don't have to eat with the yarmulke. You're sitting in the same spot. Okay? So that's basically the basic halacha. Now, how big does a yarmulke have to be? You left, sort of, huh? Okay, oh, you're here. How big does a yarmulke have to be? Okay, so I got a pretty big one here now. I'm getting a lot of flack from my family for it, but I'm sticking with it. Meanwhile, what? To cover the bald spot for sure. If you have a bald spot, sometimes it looks like you have a yarmulke, so maybe you don't need it at all. Anyway, so the Chazon Ish says that it has to cover most of your head. That's how big the covering has to be. And Rav Moshe Feinstein says it does not have to cover most of your head. And he has an interesting proof, which we'll get to. He just says it has to sort of be visible from wherever anybody's looking at you, and they would have to see it. Which is not that, what?
Rav Moshe had a big yarmulke.
He had a big yarmulke. Just because what he did doesn't mean he passed like that. Right? But that's basically from whatever corner you're looking at the person, you want to be able to see the head covering. Right? Yeah? Fine. So now, what happens if you don't have a head covering? This is where the confusion comes in. Let's say you don't have a yarmulke. So what do? Do you cover your hand? Do you cover your head with your hand? Do you use your sleeve? Can you use somebody else's hand? So this is where it depends on what you're doing. Okay? The halacha is very clear that for you to make a bracha, to put anything from your own body on top of your head does not work. Okay, so in the middle of the night, you got to get up and you want to take a drink and you can't find your yarmulke, right? Going like this will not work. Even going with your arm will not work. That's one of the confusions. The reason where people get the arm thing is if you have your sleeve, since your sleeve is not part of your body, so then you put your sleeve over your head, then you can make a bracha. That's considered a covering. Right? So that's what people, when you move it like this, it doesn't cover. So what you do is you hold onto your sleeve and do it like that. Then that would work. As will your friend's hand will work. Okay? So, because that's not part of your body. So if you're on a hike and you lost a yarmulke and you want to make a bracha and you don't have a sleeve, which I imagine here if you're on a hike you don't have any sleeves. I would hope you don't have sleeves.
When you're swimming, that's your
What?
Swimming,
if you can make a bracha in a pool at all, but yeah, or swimming, so what do? You ask your friend to put the hand on your head and then that will work. Right? Yeah. What? In swimming, can you make a bracha in a swimming pool? That's a different story.
Why not?
What? It depends. A hot swimming pool, and maybe if it's hot, then it could be there's a smell there. So you wouldn't be able to do it. If it's a cold swimming pool, then you'd be more lenient. But anyway, so that would be the halacha that you have to either use your friend's hand or use your sleeve. Okay, there are poskim that say that bidi eved, if you're stuck and you don't have a choice, you can use your hand on your head, but it's certainly not what should be done. But what happens if you lost your yarmulke and it blew away in the wind? You have wind here? You have wind?
Occasionally.
Okay. Occasionally there's wind. Okay. So you have your yarmulke blows off in the wind, and you want to run and get it. So now this is where the confusion is. So you think, well, it's not considered a head covering if I do this. So then I got to start doing this, and it's very hard to run after yarmulke when it's about to cross the street. And for walking 4 amas, the halacha is very clear. Your hand does work on top of your head. Okay? So then it's a little easier to run with your hand like this. What?
It's just for saying the blessing.
Just right. Just for brachas, that's where your hand doesn't work. For what is it saying? For running around, walking more than 4 amas, then your hand does work.
Does that mean
a synagogue?
If there's
Synagogue also, no, hand will not work.
So it's just the midas chasidus to a yarmulke. You could just someone decides that they prefer not to do music.
Good, thank you. Good, I almost forgot that was my, thank you, I appreciate it. Push comes to shove, if you say that it's midas chasidus, and then this fellow with the business meeting, if he feels that he's going to take a loss because he doesn't have on a yarmulke, and we say that it's midas chasidus, then yes, he would be able to take off his yarmulke. There's a Taz who says that nowadays that only Jews wear head coverings for the most part, right? I mean, back then everybody wore head coverings. Yeah. But it's a very small minority, right? For the most part, only Jews wear head coverings. Therefore, the Taz holds it's an Isser Dairaisa not to wear a yarmulke. To go without a yarmulke according to the Taz is also from the Torah, because then you're making yourself look like a guy. If you go with this Taz, then you cannot take off your yarmulke by the business meeting. So again, it would depend on the situation. There's a very interesting tshuva from Ramosha where somebody asked him. I don't want to get into trouble with this a little bit, but hey, this is Ramosha's tshuva. He asked him. He says, going into a movie theater. Okay, we're not going to discuss whether you're allowed to go into a movie theater. That's what I don't want to get into trouble with. But the shaila was, he's going into a movie theater. Should he take off his yarmulke or not? Meaning, if you say that religious Jews should not go to movie theaters, so what do you say?
I said, if I'm going to act like a boy, I should at least take my yarmulke off.
That's what I think. So you're Muhammad to Ramosha almost. But anyway, so the question was, I'm doing something improper, at least the questioner thought it was an improper thing, and we'll see from Ramosha's answer, he also thought it was improper to go to movies. And again, movies is just the way the shaila was asked. It can be any, it could be gambling, be ball games, depending on whatever it is that you, or when you get to use a smartphone, but or wear a jacket not checked for shatnez, no, okay. Anyway, so should you take off your yarmulke or not? So Ramosha answers, theoretically he would be correct to take off the yarmulke, not so that he doesn't look like he's religious, okay? But that's the way Ramosha's answer is, but it's a big but that he answers. He ends off with. He says, however, that's only if you are really an earnest Jew and you really deep down feel that you don't want to make a chil Hashem, and you really feel for Judaism that it shouldn't look like an Orthodox Jew is going into a movie theater, which he says. And since you're going to a movie, you are not that type of Jew, therefore you do have to wear the yarmulke, right? You're following his thought process, which is sort of what you're saying. Again, he's saying, if you were legit, the real legit, then theoretically you should take off your yarmulke not to make Jews look bad. But since you're going to a movie theater, that means you're not legit, therefore you have to wear the yarmulke. That's the way it came out.
You can't take off a yarmulke to make yourself feel to blend in.
How about putting on a cap?
Yeah, how do hats like this?
What?
Why not a cap?
You can
Why not? I don't know why. That's what the question was. I don't know. I myself, I'm not sure. Are you allowed? I mean, myself, I'm not sure about a lot of things. But I'm saying, when somebody wants to wear a cap to go to a ball game, that means you're actively trying to not look Jewish, I think.
So
if I wore a cap, I don't know what I would look like, but I'm saying.
So the Taz would say that's an issue.
The Taz only says not to wear a yarmulke. He doesn't say.
No, but the point is that when you take.
But then what would be the point of the cap then?
I don't know.
Okay, no, I don't know the answer. I'm not sure.
Who said it's supposed to be a keeper? It has to be covered.
That's true. So 100%. I know a Rav who paskin. Somebody asked him, "How about this? You're on a hike or whatever. They're making a minyan. You left your hat. If you wear a hat, meaning a black hat, expensive hat, not your $10 black cap, not a hat. You left it in the car. You're too lazy to go to the car. Whatever it is. Should you wear a baseball cap with your favorite sports team or whatever for davening or not? Meaning. Okay, let's say you have a yarmulke. Certainly if you don't have a yarmulke, for sure you got to wear the cap. But even if you have a yarmulke, does that replace your black hat?
Do you have to wear a black hat?
Yeah. That's right. It could be any color hat. I'm saying, okay.
No, do you have to wear a hat when you're davening?
That's the question. Meaning, do you have to wear a hat when you're davening? And if yes, is it proper to daven to Hashem with a baseball team's cap on your head? So it depends on what. Depends how bad they are.
Good team.
It depends if you're davening for your team too. So some players can say yes, the double covering is important enough that you should put on a cap. Okay, but that's the way I've heard it. I've not. What? Maybe you should wear it backwards. Sorry, yeah.
So, the shiloh that has come up several times is not the case of the movie theater, but the case of a trade restaurant.
Right.
If somebody actually has to go, they're going for a business meeting that they're required to go to, it's whatever, and then they say, I'm not gonna eat anything, I'm not gonna drink anything, whatever it is, but should I wear my yarmulke?
Right. Yeah, so see, in Phoenix, this might be more of a shiloh. In New York, I believe, this is no longer a shiloh. It was a shiloh for a while ago. Now,
What is in New York?
in New York is so totally out of control of conveniences for Jews. That's why I like my kids to come out of a Shabbos to show what real Jews have to live without all the conveniences. But in New York, it's very simple. You have a business meeting in a treifa restaurant, you just call up one of the kosher restaurants, they will deliver the food to the treifa restaurant, double wrapped, with your own silverware, with your own dishes, whatever you want, and you eat there.
But then is it more
That's
Italian than
right.
you're
So that
eating
might
at
even
a
be
trade
worse, right?
restaurant?
Because you're eating in the restaurant. The answer is it is so common that if you ask an average New Yorker, certainly anybody in business, if they see somebody sitting in the biggest treif restaurant in Manhattan and they're eating, nobody's going to think that that guy is eating treif. They're going to think that the person's eating the kosher food. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is in New York. So
I
Phoenix,
think it's the same today everywhere.
do they have it here?
No, not because the food is delivered, but because
in the hotels.
today, everybody knows that it's multicultural around the world. And it's a silliness to think, oh, he's wearing yarmulke, Mela, I think Ruth's Chris is kosher. It's silly, ridiculous. Or, Mela, I'm kosher him, that he's eating at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Both of those things are silly. So I think if he wears the yarmulke, you know, if he wears the yarmulke,
then he's fine.
he's just being like the Sikh,
okay.
like everybody's proud of who they are, you know, they wear
Right, it's a better business meeting. He doesn't want to be looked at as the Jew who's like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Wait, so you're talking about without the yarmulke?
With or without, right? I mean, that's why he doesn't want to wear the yarmulke, not only because
I'm saying something different.
I'm
He's
saying
already
it's-
totally comfortable wearing yarmulke.
This is a different
but I'm
situation,
going
right.
to the treif restaurant. I have a meeting at wherever. You know, I have to go. My team is all going there.
Right, so
I
then,
have to go.
so then, yeah,
He's
so
just
I would,
wearing
right,
yarmulke.
nowadays it would be same thing, like I went marching through the streets yesterday with a talis on, then afterwards I realized maybe that's not the right thing to do for many reasons, but in the old days, nobody wore a talis in the street, meaning before Erevs. Everybody put a raincoat, whatever coats. I don't know if it would look weirder here with the raincoat on or the talis, I don't know. But now that everything goes in America, right? So then that's what you said, right? That's anything goes in America. So then you have it much more lenient.
Restaurants will let you bring in food that's not from their place.
Not only that, they will even arrange it for you. Yes.
They'll do that here. It's more expensive than usual.
Listen. I mean, the time's up, I think, but I could just continue. But the halacha really is if you're allowed to eat cold food in a restaurant's china, with no cold food, even warm food, just as long as it's less than about 110 degrees, which I imagine most food gets served is less than that. You would be able to even use the china and maybe not the knives, but the forks and china that's in the tray for restaurant. You are 100% allowed to put the food down on, as long as it's not hot and as long as you only do it temporarily. If you constantly have business meetings in the same restaurant, then that's not temporary. That's more permanent, and you wouldn't be allowed to.
And as long as it's not owned by a Jew.
What? The restaurant.
The restaurant.
Yes, it would have to be owned by a guy. Yeah, so that comes into same thing. Like okay, whatever. Let's leave that. We're gonna.
That's a lechatchila. That's like you can do that. If you're
on a temporary basis. On a temporary basis.
Yeah, like if you're going
you go to a hotel. You go to a hotel and they have
breakfast,
those, the kitchens in the hotel, and you want to use the forks and the, I'm not going to say knives, but the forks and the cups for cold food, then it's 100% allowed. Assuming that it's clean, it has to be clean. You have to sometimes these restaurants don't necessarily clean it so well, so you have to get up and wash it yourself. But yeah, as long as you assume that it's clean, then it's fine. Even yes. There are opinions that porcelain maybe is even more made. Hot you should not have. Hot you should not unless you have to know glass would be okay. Hot coffee in a mug.
No, I was told, I won't mention the rug's name, that the temperature they clean all the dishes is so hot that it pretty much
kashers it.
Right.
Okay, so it depends. Now you're getting into the Starbucks issue, which is another subject for what? That's a lot of confusion. The Starbucks, yes, that's a big confusion. Yeah, it's got to be really hot. It's got to be boiling hot, meaning 212. You want it to be 212.
Ahead of the RCA.
Just use disposable cups.
It would depend on how many places it was.
So can you
Can't say how it's used. That's how it's used. I'm sorry.
Going back to the keeper issue as Bulgar. You said that since today it's road people do not cover their head, so then we don't do that. But at a pool game, everybody's wearing a baseball cap for their team. It's hard to find the guy who's not wearing a cap.
Right. Good. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
Regarding
I would assume that you take not just anybody at a ball game. You take the entire society as a whole. But maybe you have a point. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah.
Regarding the same situation, back on the Kippah subject, from where do we even learn about the double cover since the Kippah seems to be the only thing written down in the Gemara?
Right, so there's a Rambam that discusses that you should have an extra covering based on a Gemara that they wrap themselves when they daven. They wrap themselves.
Is it just like a Midas Chasidus, or what is it?
It's not even. I would say it's probably not even that. Not
I
even
mean, I
that.
just saw.
Yeah, so some say this is going to be a little bit controversial, but some really say that black hat was when you used to go see. Black. When I mean black, I mean gray. I mean whatever hat. The hats. Those. Yeah, fedora, right? Those type of hats that's what everybody wore way back when. Not even that long ago, right? 75 years ago, 100 years ago, that's what people wore, and then nobody would be seen without it. So you can't go in front of Hashem without it either, right? But nowadays that nobody does, so then maybe that halacha changes. There are some of that opinion. Why we don't wear ties before we daven? I don't know.
Can you answer the hot coffee in the mug in the hotel section?
Okay, so the hot coffee.
Not at Starbucks, in the hotel temporarily.
Not this, just temporarily in a hotel.
Yeah, you go to.
So okay, so I mean I get this question more when you have those instant soups with the noodles.
Right.
So people go with their families to the hotel and they want to cook the instant soups with the noodles in the mugs, right? So the issue with the mugs is, are they actually eating any non-kosher in the mug? Probably not. But they wash those mugs together with other non-kosher dishes and plates and whatever it is. So then the question is, do they add soap? Do they wash it with soap? So therefore the taste doesn't transfer. So most places, the way they wash the dishes is they wash it with soap at all times. So therefore the trait does not transfer over to the coffee. So there's really no reason to believe that anybody's drinking non-kosher coffee in a mug. And even if they did, there's a rule that's called stam kalim eina b'nayomim, meaning most utensils have not been used in 24 hours. We know that anything not used in 24 hours can't impart any bad taste, right? So even theoretically, somebody did eat not kosher coffee in the mug, it would be very difficult to say it's going to be also. So therefore, really, it's mutter. The simplest way to get out of it is that just like in Hilchos Shabbos, you have Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, Kli Shlishi, right? So basically, if you take your coffee and you make it and then pour it into a second cup, let it sit for a few seconds, and then pour it into the third cup, then that would be, there's no transfer of taste whatsoever because it's not going to be hot enough, and it's also in a third utensil, then for sure you're okay. It basically has the equivalent of cold. You know what I'm saying? That's basically the best way to do it in a hotel, only because it's hot. But if you're drinking cold milk, that's fine. On a temporary basis. So if you're always traveling, going to a hotel, then it's a problem. Just quickly, once we're on the subject, the reason why Starbucks is an issue is because Starbucks has 3 sections. I was never in a Starbucks. I don't drink coffee, so don't think I have this. This is third-hand knowledge. Okay, I mean, there's articles on the internet about it. There's there's probably articles on everything we said today on the internet. But Starbucks does 1 round of washing without soap at all. Right?
First round?
What?
First round?
I don't think it's the first round, but since they're assuming that it's ben yomi, the taste is still in the thing. So when they wash it without soap, so now the taste is all transferring. That's why Starbucks has an issue as opposed to McDonald's. I don't know if anybody ever checked into McDonald's. What?
The taste of the utensil?
What? The soap. Then that's a machlokes whether that will do that. Meaning, but it's only at B'shas Ma'is, only at that time. Anyways, so that's why Starbucks has more of an issue than the other places because they do 1 wash. They have 3 section sink. One's with soap. I think the third one with soap. The middle one's without soap. Maybe I'm mixing it. Whatever it is, they do 1 wash without soap at all. So that's basically like taking non-kosher dishes and kosher dishes and putting it into a hot sink with no with no soap to make the taste bad, so therefore all the taste is going to transfer. That's what kiosks.
Even though they did soap first.
Even though they did so, that's what you're saying, right? Even though they did so first, so that's a disagreement. Some would say, push comes to shove. I don't know anybody that says that Starbucks is not allowed. Meaning, push comes to shove, Starbucks is going to be allowed too, because of all these combinations of things that we're saying. It's just a matter of you wouldn't do it in your own house, so therefore, why would you do it from Starbucks? Just go someplace else.
The travelers.
Right, so that's what travelers, if again, in every scenario has its reason to allow. Yeah.
You're saying what's it about the kiosk?
Kiosks don't really serve hot, not kosher stuff, so therefore it's not going to be an issue, and they also don't wash the dishes that way.
Usually, like hotels, they have commercial dishwashers, which is not necessarily, it's on a conveyor belt.
Right.
More.
Right.
So that shouldn't be an issue.
So that's more lenient, yes.
Much more lenient.
By the way, all caterers in hotels, Jewish caterers in hotels, New York, from what I understand, none of them bring their own glass. They'll bring their own china. They will not bring their own glasses. So when you're drinking in a glass at an event in a hotel, the glasses are 100%. The tray. They're going to be whether glass becomes tray or not. But meaning the caterers do not bring their own glass because they rely on glass being less of an issue. I just heard a story about a caterer who said, okay, why not? They have a smorgasbord, so they have fruit, which is cold. So they said, why do we have to bring our own dishes for the fruit? Well, let's just leave it there because it's cold and people, it's fine. But the problem was that they realized in the middle of the affair that people were taking their fruit plates, and then when they were done with the fruit, they would walk over to the hot and putting the hot on it. That was a problem. Okay, everybody should be matzliach.
I have a practical side for now. Is this considered a suit that people would make a muzumin on the French toast?
Together? I mean, say is this consider everybody eating together?
Yeah.
I don't see
There are
why
probably
not.
enough people who had bread, no? How many people had
Well, that's not bad. Is this
I think
considered?
so, yeah.
Yeah.